UCF is back on the road in the Big 12 this week with a trip to Ames, Iowa to face the number 9 Iowa State Cyclones. It's been a tough 3 weeks for the Knights. After the last-minute rally to beat TCU on the road, UCF has since lost 3 straight to Colorado, Florida, and Cincinnati. Iowa State, meanwhile, is 6-0, their best start since 1938, and currently the highest-ranked Big 12 team. They are 3-0 in the league with wins against Houston, Baylor, and West Virginia. This is Brandon Helwig, publisher of UCFsports.com, and I'm joined by Bill Seals, publisher of Cyclone Report on the Rivals.com network, to talk about this week's matchup. Welcome, Bill.
Hey, Brandon, appreciate you having me. Good to talk this matchup for a little bit.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad to be talking with you. So I know you're a native of Iowa. So just first off, just kind of tell us about your background, just maybe growing up in the state. How long have you been covering Iowa State? What's kind of your background with the Cyclones?
Yeah, well, I am a native of the state of Iowa and grew up, went to high school in the Des Moines area and graduated from actually an NAIA level school in the Des Moines area, and put in my time for about 2-3 years working for a local newspaper, and you earn your stripes, and I got my big break actually back in 1999. I began covering Iowa State, so at a similar fashion as I am right now, really, with football, basketball, recruiting on both sides, so kind of still the focus. And obviously things have changed a lot since 1999, so a lot more of these podcasts and a lot more online and stuff than what working for a newspaper it was back then.
Yeah, so you've been through, you've seen a lot of Iowa State football seasons, and and you can attest to it better than anyone. Kind of the national perceptions have changed about Iowa State football. For years they were just considered, one of the lower level teams in the Big 12. Now they're considered one of the, better programs under Matt Campbell, who's been, leading the program since 2016. Just how fun has it been for you, for someone that covers the team? I know it too. It's always more fun when the team is winning more games than losing. Has it been fun covering Iowa State these past few years?
Yeah, I tell you, in 25 years has been a lot of ups and downs. Some pretty good peaks and a lot of valleys before Matt Campbell got here. I think it was 2-10 and a couple of 3-9s the last 3 years leading up to when Matt got here, and it was a rough stretch in year one for him. But gosh, since then they've really been contenders. They've had some marquee victories. I think the pinnacle up to this point, probably the win in the Fiesta Bowl over Oregon in 2020. The COVID year capped off, with a win in Phoenix, and they went 9-3. But with this program, they've never won 10 games in a season, believe it or not. One of the first years I was on the job was in the 2000 season. They went 9-3, went on to win their first bowl game in school history. That was kind of the high water mark there in the Dan McCarney era. And then in 2020, they win 9 games, and then they kind of dip a little bit. The 2021 season was a little bit of a disappointment. 2022, they go 4-8. And, everybody's kind of wondering the direction of this program. But I'll tell you what, with a very young team last year, Matt laid the foundation, I think, for what it is today. They win 7 games a year ago with a very, very young team. And then this year return, I think I saw the number was maybe the second most returning snaps of any team in the country. So I think this team really going into 2024 was primed for a year like this, and the schedule is broke out very front loaded, I think, as far as winnable games. But I think here over the last half, it's going to get a lot more difficult. And of course, they end the regular season going to Utah and then coming home to host K-State. So it's going to get a lot more difficult here, I think, as the team navigates through.
Yeah, kind of on that note, what were the expectations amongst the fan base going into this season? I think they were preseason. Iowa State was preseason number 6. So, towards the upper third, I guess, of the Big 12. And kind of where's the fan base right now? Are they I imagine everyone's excited with the ranking and everything else, but you see with the college football playoff projections, obviously Iowa State is in there right now, but I guess everyone kind of understands it's still pretty early in the season. There's some tough games ahead. What were the expectations, I guess, coming in, and what is the state of the fan base right now?
Well, I think the expectations were really high coming in. I think it was the fans were probably pretty disappointed to see them pick to finish sixth in the Big 12. But I think I point back to how they finished last season, kind of on a down note in that Liberty Bowl for the second time. They have to go to Memphis to play Memphis on its home field. It didn't work out well here. The second time in the Campbell era, they lost that game, and I think kind of put a damper on what was really a rebound season. So coming in, I think everybody saw the players that were coming back, the experience, especially on the offensive side of the ball, all the skill players that they've got, and defensively, a lot of returners there as well. So I think there was some disappointment maybe with that sixth place pick by the media, but and then you also, I think you look at the schedule a little bit too, and as I mentioned, the way it was set up for Iowa State, anybody I think that really knew just a little bit about this program, and you look at that schedule, you could see that the Cyclones could do what they've done so far. So I think that the fans are pumped, they're excited. 6-0. First time since 1938, long time ago. So I think they couldn't be more excited too. And then basketball season, of course, on the horizon as well, as we see what the men's and women's programs, both top 10 to season. So a lot of excitement, I think, all around, maybe, and not even just in football right now.
Yeah, I know Iowa State's developed a great reputation for an awesome fan base. I know when UCF played them in men's basketball towards the end of last season, there was tons of them down in Orlando. I remember talking to people just before the game. A lot of people are just, transplants that live in Florida now, but there were people who were, making the trip, obviously, from Iowa. I know Iowa State has, I think, the second largest stadium in the Big 12, just a smidge behind BYU in terms of capacity, over 61,000. So just for fans watching on TV and those making the trip, what is game day like? What is game day like in Ames? What's the atmosphere like inside Jack Trice Stadium?
Well, as with anything in the Big 12, I think prime time, you're going to see amazing environments anywhere you go. But Iowa State, it's going to be another tremendous one. I think from talking to some Iowa State folks earlier today, they anticipate it being a sellout this weekend. So it's going to be a ruckus crowd, and 6:30 p.m. This is, I think, 3 or 4 primetime kickoffs in a row now for the Cyclones, and national television, and it's going to be quite the crowd, I think, again this week.
Yeah. So what is a game atmosphere like? Are there some traditions that Iowa State is known for during the course of a game, pregame, halftime, into third quarter? What are some things we might see?
Well, just some things around the stadium. I think just maybe with some of the music that they that they roll with. Obviously, "Sweet Caroline." That's a big one that they.
Is that their signature? I think a few schools have that. No, West Virginia is big with that one too.
Right, yeah. So they'll bust that one out, and there's just some other ones. But yeah, I mean, they've got a new sound system in Jack Trice Stadium this year. They're not afraid to flex on that. So yeah, it's going to be loud between the music and the piped in sound, and then the crowd. It's going to be loud.
I know. I think for people attending the game, everyone, I assume, would fly into Des Moines, which is about 45 minutes or so, an hour from Ames. Is that about right?
Yeah, 45 minutes. Just get out, and it's pretty much a straight shot up Interstate 35 to Ames.
Yeah, so is Ames kind of like your college town? Is this kind of just everything revolves around Iowa State? Is that kind of what Ames is all about?
Yeah, and I like the way that Ames is laid out. You've kind of got on the, I guess, the west-ish side of town is kind of campus town and where the university is, and then you go a little east of there, and it's kind of like its own little separate area. Ames is like commercially and residentially, so it's kind of it's divided kind of pretty much in half, I guess you could say, the way that the campus is versus the rest of the community. So and it's a community that really gets behind Iowa State athletics. Same way with the University of Iowa. These are kind of the two shows in town. There's no
Yeah.
professional sports teams, no major league professional sports teams. So it really, between the Cyclones and Hawkeyes, the respective fan bases really get behind their teams.
Yeah, kind of on that note, is it possible to quantify the allegiances in the state of Iowa between Iowa and Iowa State? Are you able to do that? Is it close to 50-50? Does one have an edge over the other one, or?
Well, it's probably getting closer to 50-50, I think, with Iowa State and Iowa. Well, Iowa State football for so many years after the 70s was not very good. The 80s and pretty much all of the 90s, really some low points. And now you saw pretty much, I guess you could say, an entire generation of fans in the state of Iowa kind of migrated toward the Hawkeyes and what they were able to do. But now I think what you've seen since Dan McCarney got them rolling, and now with Matt Campbell in his 9th season, you're seeing that next generation, I think, really pick up the Cyclones, and it's kind of interesting how it's all shaken out. But yeah, I mean, Eastern Iowa, you're probably going to be mainly Hawkeye fans. Central Iowa, I think maybe a little bit more Cyclone fans. I don't know, maybe 60-40. And, some of that just, I think, in the nature of Ames being 45 minutes away, too, it's going to be a little heavier Iowa State lean. And then Western Iowa, you've got Nebraska to contend with, too, and all the media coverage out there. So it gets interesting once you get west of town.
Gotcha. So for those making the trip, are there some recommendations maybe that people always have for visitors, whether it's food, places to see, whether it's Ames or Des Moines, or what are some places you would recommend for travelers?
Well, the accommodations actually up in Ames, I think, have gotten a lot better probably over the last 5 or 6 years. There's a lot more hotels, so I would think a lot of the UCF fans probably got rooms up in Ames. So if that's the case, there are a few really good options. If you got a family, kids along, they always love Hickory Park, which is off of Duff there in Ames. It's been around for several years. That's kind of a place that the kids always love to go. They can get ice cream at the end of their meal and Sundays and all that. But if you're just traveling with your spouse or other groups of friends, Cornbread is one of the best, I think, barbecue places around town. Of course, it's called Cornbread.
Okay. Of course, corn.
BRED when you're looking it up on your GPS or whatnot. But they've got some of the best barbecue in town. Sweet Caroline's is another one, kind of a southern style cooking. It's really good. And then if you get out northwest, Wallabies is a really good sports bar. If you're hanging around on Friday night, they're going to have the college football games on in there, and it's good food and bar in there.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about this team. Rocco Beck is the starting quarterback, and I know some UCF people will be familiar with him. He's originally from the Tampa area. Here in the starting job, last season after he was a redshirt freshman, just kind of talk about him coming into the program. Like, was he expected to come in and be the quarterback of the future? Did he win a battle? Just kind of tell us about him and what kind of quarterback he is.
Yeah, he came out of Wesley Chapel, Wiregrass High School. So they had some guys back when he was there, and Iowa State fortunate to get him out of there. His dad's gone on to be a coach in the UFL.
Yeah, he's a former NFL tight end. I know he's done some television work in the past. I know he's done some UCF games through the years, his father.
Exactly. And he also happened to be Rocco's offensive coordinator his senior year of high school, too. I'm not sure how many folks know that. So, but great family. Comes from, came up to Iowa State, and I think Brock Purdy, that name certainly helped, and Iowa State, what they were able to do with him and offensively, and the coaching staff that did a great job, I think, in recruiting him, was able to get him up to ISU. And once they got him here, I think they've also done a good job NIL wise in keeping him here. There have been several interesting off seasons they go in, and you wonder if he might be one of the quarterbacks poached away. But he's been a hot commodity, I think, in the offseason, but he's been loyal to Iowa State. And really, I think here in year two's taken his game to another level. That first full offseason where he knew he was going to be the guy. Great players around him, and Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, those top two receivers, and really just a great foundation, I think. And he's taken his game just to an entirely different level in 2024.
Is the offense fairly balanced, run and pass? I mean, I know I think Iowa State's ranked a little bit higher in rushing offense. Would you say it's pretty even overall, or what would you say is the strength of the offense?
Yeah, I think it's gotten more even as the season's gone on. They got off to a pretty rough start rushing the ball, but that's really picked up in recent weeks. I think they had 3 weeks in a row of over 235 yards, and then last week another. I think they had 125, 130. It was enough to be effective. Carson Hansen was their star back. They've got 3 of them. He was kind of the star last week and approached 100 yards, had 3 touchdowns. So it's kind of been a by committee, and whoever's got the hot hand and had a good week of practice.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about that because UCF leans heavily on RJ Harvey as their top running back, but there's basically 3 running backs who have very similar numbers. Did they kind of plan out each game who gets what carries? Is it, like you said, riding the hot hand? Is that kind of how it's gone?
I think that against West Virginia, it was kind of a Carson Hansen type of game. He's that one cut guy and is going to get upfield, put his head down, dip his shoulders, and get those tough yards. West Virginia, gosh, with the defense that they have, they needed that physical type of runner like him. Against Baylor, it just seemed kind of the way that game played out. They needed a little bit more of what Jalen Jackson did. He's kind of that 5'6", shifty running back, good straight line speed, and made some really big cuts in that game and got some extra yardage. He had a couple touchdowns in that one. And then, of course, Abu Sama was the star in 2023 and what he did. And so really they can go any which way with those 3 backs. And it's going to behind an offensive line that has really kind of come into its own here in the second year of having a position coach, and Ryan Clanton, who came over from UNI and has done a great job with that group.
Yeah, talk a little bit about the wide receivers. You mentioned Jaden Higgins earlier. I know he was all Big 12 last year. Is that kind of where it starts when you talk about the wide receivers?
Right. Yeah, I think those two. You look at the stats and you wonder who Iowa State's third receiver is. It kind of seems non-existent when you look at it beyond.
It's kind of similar to UCF when you look at there's one guy, Kobe Hudson, and you look at the stats and you're wondering who's the second receiver. The second receiver for UCF opted out a couple of weeks ago, but I'm looking at the stats right now. You're right. There's a big disparity after the top 2.
Yeah, Ben Bramer, I think the tight end, the sophomore, you'd probably say he's the third receiver, and he was a guy they brought in. He played as a true freshman last year and was kind of like a receiver first. He tight end when you look at the roster, but how they used him, it was pretty much as a wide receiver. But he's really gotten a lot better, I think, as a blocker, and they're using him now. When you see him out on the field, it's not going to be a pass play because he's able to give them so much more. And he's had some good games, some big catches here along the way.
And you mentioned Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver. Higgins, we talked about Rocco Beck being from Florida. Jaden Higgins is from Florida. He's from Miami. I've always known Iowa State. I mean, they've had a tradition of recruiting Florida through the years, and they got a lot of guys just scrolling through their roster right now who are from the Florida area. I don't know who you talk to, or if you've talked to, guys this week in terms of, the press conferences and stuff. I don't know if you talked to any Florida guys, but would you imagine a lot of these guys will be fired up to play, against guys who they may have faced during their high school days?
Yeah, well, Higgins and Rocco were 2 that we got earlier today. The in-state connection didn't really come up too much in that, but I think certainly when you look at the rosters, there's probably going to be some overlapping there with guys that have played against one another. Rocco kind of was from a different part of the state of Florida than Higgins was, coming from Miami. But they like to go down there and recruit the state of Florida. Xavier Townsend was a back that UCF flipped from Iowa State a few years ago. So they get down there and they'll maybe get try to get 2 or 3 each class and establish some relationships. They have a pretty good base, I think, over in the golf side, and then some coaching connections as well as you get over kind of in the West Palm Beach area, maybe a little north of there. With Rockledge High School is another one.
Space Coast.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe Xavier Townsend. Maybe he'll eventually. Who knows? He's going to be in the portal. He opted out a couple weeks ago. UCF's number 2 receiver and primary return man. So they
wanted him as a running back. So it was kind of it was an interesting transition for him and how things played out. But gosh, he was a dynamic player, and when they lost him, I thought that was a big hit. But Iowa State's been able to figure it out on the offensive side of the ball for sure, even after losing him.
Yeah, just kind of on that note, because UCF's lost some guys, quite a few guys, honestly, comparatively to nationally, who have opted out. They won a red shirt. I guess it's always after that 4th game. Was Iowa State dealing with anything like that this year? Did some guys just say, "Hey, maybe I'm just going to red shirt and hit the portal"? Did they have some guys opt out?
No, it's been so far so good. You always wonder when they hit that like that game 4 or game 5, how that's going to go. But they came out of that pretty good. So yeah, I mean it's a culture thing with what they've developed up there, and everybody's bought in, and obviously with the 6-0 start too, I think it makes it certainly much easier for guys to buy in.
Absolutely. So we've talked about offense. Let's talk about defense a little bit. I know safety Jeremiah Cooper, he's one of the best players in the Big 12, was all Big 12 last season. I know he's off to another great start. Just kind of tell us about Iowa State's defense and maybe who are some players to watch.
Yeah, they're out of a 3-3-5 alignment. They pretty much had that since the second season that Campbell was there, and John Haycock was a coach that came over with him from Toledo. So with that as a kind of a 3 high safety look, they're really good on the back end. They are one of the top teams in the country in interceptions, and it's been that secondary really that is making it happen. So not a whole lot of pass rush that they've generated. They've kind of struggled in that regard in recent years after losing Will McDonald to the Jets, a first-round pick last year. So they've struggled a little bit to replace him. So and then I guess when you go top players up front, probably going to be J.R. Singleton and Dominic Orange, a couple of interior defensive linemen, big players in the run game. And again in the secondary, John Tez Williams, Stark, Florida guy, actually another Florida guy. Receptions in 3 straight games now, first year starting cornerback, and then those safeties, Bo Freeler, Malik Verdon, Jeremiah Cooper. Those 3 are big time players. So Iowa State, I think, one of the best groups of safeties in the country. Not afraid to say that those guys are big time, and where it's kind of where they've kind of struggled a little bit this year's maybe been the injury bug at linebacker. They just this last week they've had a preferred walk-on that's a redshirt freshman started and played most of the game at Mike, and then at Will you've got a sophomore, a first-year starter in Cooper Ebel. And then on the outside, they lost their starter, Jacob Ellis, last week too, and have had to roll with a true freshman that was a late flip from South Dakota State. They got him last December, and here he is playing significant snaps as a true freshman. So I think it's the system, though, with Haycock being a veteran guy there. It's the system really. It's plug and play. Those guys go in there and they do their jobs. I think that the coaches believe they're going to be successful.
Interesting. So is that kind of the biggest health issue right now? The biggest injury issue is that linebacker spot, or there's some other areas where you kind of wonder week to week whether guys will be available?
Yeah. And it's questionable, I think, on how that linebacker group's going to look this week. Cale Brzezina might be back. We'll see on that. Otherwise, it might be Rylan Barnes again, that walk-on playing at the mic. So yeah, it's always you're not going to get a real clear picture, I think, until they go through warm-ups on Saturday.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see how this game goes. I mean, for UCF, I think everyone expected to be in a much different place right now, midway through the season. I know Gus Malzahn, had a big offseason, or so we thought, with a lot of these portal guys. KJ Jefferson was supposed to come in and lead at quarterback and get this offense rolling, and that hasn't been the case. He was benched last week, and frankly, I'm not even sure if we'll see him again the rest of the season. I think they're going to go with Ja'Cory Brown. He was a transfer from Miami, maybe true freshman EJ Colson, who started this past game, didn't end up playing most of the way. Who knows? He might play as well. So we'll see what happens. I know Iowa State is a 2-touchdown favorite. UCF have been coming off 3 games they lost, but they were a Vegas odds-on favorite to win these past 3. Obviously didn't happen. So what is the MO though for Iowa State? I know they're a heavy favorite in this game. If they're going to win, what needs to happen from the Iowa State side?
Yeah, I think they need to get the run game established in that game. In the UCF game, they've got to control the line of scrimmage, really. They've done a good job having balance here these last several weeks. That needs to continue. And then a better start. That's been a big topic week in and week out with this team. They've been, to the credit of the players and that veteran coaching staff, they've been able to make the adjustments and recover pretty early. I think the tablets that they have this season has enabled them to do that. Otherwise, it's kind of been halftime. They've had to make those adjustments, but they've done well on the fly. But I think it'd be so much easier for them, and they would agree to get off to a much better start in this game and not be playing from behind early. So, yeah, I think it's going to come down to the trenches, though. And also, this is a team that has been one of the top, I think, 20 teams in the country in turnover margin as well. And then when you factor in turnover scoring margin, on top of that, they went into last week number 3 in the country, and they were plus 14 in that win against West Virginia. So they've done a good job in winning the turnover margin, and then when they do, turning those into points on the offensive end.
Awesome stuff, Bill. I appreciate it. Thanks for talking to me over these last almost 30 minutes to learn more about Iowa State. I know I'm excited for this game on Saturday. I know the fan base for UCF will come around a little bit. I know the fans are a little bit down right now because they thought they'd be in a different spot than 3-3, but this is a big opportunity. We'll see what happens. But if UCF can turn it around, this would be a good week to do it. But sure. I appreciate it very much, Bill.
Hey, Brandon. Yeah, have a good one, okay? And I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Thank you very much.
Take care.